Welcome to Dr. M's Vodcast, a vodcast with a mission to connect continuous improvement professionals across the world.
Dr. M?
The command.
Yeah, thank you. So we have so far 25 participants. Let's get started. So good afternoon, everyone. A very warm welcome to all the participants and a special welcome to our speaker, Dr. Jackie Graham. We are delighted to have you with us once again. And for those who are joining very first time in this session, because we have sent this time some fresh invitation. So this is our monthly Deming learning series where Dr. Jackie Graham share insight around Dr. W. Edward Deming philosophies along with leadership and management. So today's session is the fourth in this series, and we will be exploring operational definition with Dr. Jackie Graham today. Those who don't know Dr. Jackie, so Jackie is the managing director of Statistical Edge Private Limited and a fellow of both the Australian Institute of Company Directors and the Australian Organization for Quality and a senior member of the American Society for Quality. And she is a qualified chemical engineer and hold a doctorate in statistics and quality management from the University of Salford, England. In 2021, she was awarded the Juran Medal for Outstanding and Meritorious Service in Quality Management and Business Improvement in Australia and globally by the Australian Organization of Quality. So in 2022, she was awarded the Special Service Award by the New Zealand Organization for Quality, and she worked as an aide to Dr. W. Edward Deming in the last 5 years of her life, assisting with 2 and 4 day conference as well as consulting at board level to major companies in the US, Australia, and United Kingdom. So she was a contributor to Dr. Neve's 12 days to Deming course, and she mentored study groups of students completing the course. So Jackie, we are grateful to have you with us today. And without further ado, I'll hand it over to you. So the floor is yours now, Dr. Jackie. Thank you.
Okay, I'm trying to share my screen, but I'm not able to at this point. I've sent a request to share. Can somebody let me share my screen? Oh, yeah, thank you. That should be fine. Did that all work? Yes? What can
Yes.
you see?
Yes,
What can
it's
you
up.
see?
Yeah.
It did work. Right, okay. So there we go. Right. So we're here talking about operational definitions today. But I'd remind you, why are we here? We're here to learn, to have fun, and to make a difference. And that's really what I'm trying to do. So let's talk about operational definitions. So Deming quote, no requirement of industry is so much neglected. So what I want to explore today is why he said that and what we can do to change that. Because this is in Deming's work, most of his work is thought-provoking and thinking-based. This is actually one of the practical tools that you can use to help improve. So in some ways, this is, and conceptually, they're the easiest, not necessarily in reality. So if you go to Deming and you go to Out of the Crisis, chapter 9, Deming thought that this subject was so important when he wrote Out of the Crisis that he dedicated a whole chapter to it. And he describes there as nothing is more important for transaction of business than the use of operational definitions. So he saw it as a key point in how we do business. And it didn't matter what kind of business you were in. It was the point that we need to define things correctly. So, also in chapter 9, the only communicable way of any word, prescription, instruction, specification, measure, attribute, regulation, law, system, edict is the record of what happened of a specified operation or test. One wonders right at this moment, what is the operational definition of a peace plan? My operational definition, I think, may be different to the ones that are going on in the Middle East at the moment. And I know that Jim Lawton's on the line from the Middle East, so he's facing it front and central. But it's about what do you see when you define something and what do you get back? So that's the operational part of the definition. So let's talk about it in terms of what is it? What we're trying to do is communicate meaning. Right, so we've talked in previous sessions about purpose of an organization. And what we try and do is in a statement is communicate the meaning about what the organization is about. So what we want to do is communicate meaning. Let's think about it in terms of a measure. So I find it easier for people to get the concept of this if we talk about measurement. So let's think of a measure, which I'll give you some examples shortly, and we will work through what we mean. But basically, it's a clear, concise, detailed definition of a measure when operational definitions are applied to measurement. So, and this is key to collecting any kind of data. So when you see that number, you're not confused. It removes subjectivity. So let's think of something simple in this group. How many people are attending the group? Right? We need to define what attendance means. So how many people are attending this meeting? Well, we could define it as somebody needs to be online for, what should we say, at least 50 minutes of the session? Because do we want to count those people who come in and then immediately go out, or just come in for the last 5 minutes? We have to make some decision about that. Now, Dr. M is providing certificates to those people who would like them of attendance at this meeting. I've said, I want your cameras on or some communication with you in the chat to be sure you're there. Because I'm very aware attendance means actually attending, and people could put their phones on or their computers on, go off and do something else, go make a cup of tea, make lunch, eat lunch, come back, turn it off. They haven't actually attended. So I want proof people attended, right? So I've created an operational definition for Dr. M of what attendance means. So camera on or in the chat, we know that you're there for the majority of the meeting. So that's our definition, and that's our operational definition. Then it removes confusion with everyone, and it's removing subjectivity from whether should I give them a certificate or not give them a certificate. It's given them a clear definition. Everyone has to understand it in exactly the same way for it to be useful. Right? So in any measurement, if you look at something simple like the on-time running of a train, everyone has to have the same understanding. And I'm going to come back to that particular one in a little while. So, specifically in measurement, you might describe a specific test and how that test is going to be conducted. And then how are we going to make a decision whether it's good or bad? So I need to describe the test, work out how I'm going to make a judgment, and that will lead to a decision. That's what we're looking for in measurement. Is the product good or bad? Is the product not good but could be reworked? Is the product so bad it's scrap? We have to be able to make these decisions, and we all want to make them the same way, which is easier in some things than others. And so when I was working for General Motors in Liverpool in the UK, we used to make instrument clusters. It's one of the products that we were making in one of the components plants. And if the instrument clusters were made on day shift, they were of a slightly different quality to the ones on night shift, because the person at the end of the line that made that judgment as to whether the instrument cluster was good enough or not was different. So I would tell you immediately you'd prefer a night shift instrument cluster to a day shift instrument cluster, right? Because the standard that was being passed on night shift was higher. That was one of the challenges we had on how we bring them together so the judgment is the same, because you want the product to be the same. What people cannot stand is when they have one experience and it's a particular thing, and then they experience it again and it's different. So it's variability in product that leads to confusion, and you monitor that variability through measurement. So this is a very sad barrel of bitumen. Kind of relevant at the moment, but I spend a lot of time working in bitumen. So I'm going to, for an example, use viscosity of bitumen. So I would want to be answering some of these questions. When would I take a sample? Okay, how would I take that sample? When would I take it to make sure that it is typical of the product? So for those of you who don't know, these are made in bitumen's made in refineries. When you take crude oil, basically you take off all the good stuff, and the sludge you end up at the bottom is bitumen. But that bitumen has to meet certain standards for it to be used in a road. So you need to decide at what point you're going to take the sample so it's created into a tank, and it is blended until it reaches what they expect it to have certain properties. So you have to make sure that process is completed, any chemical reactions are completed, so that you've got a consistent product from that point on. So what point in production you need to answer. We need to answer, how are you going to sample? How are you going to sample to make sure that you are measuring that product correctly? So there's sample points on the tanks, but you have to have a good discipline. You have to flush that material through, because there'll be some material from the previous batch, flush it through, and then take a sample. So all these things are important. Otherwise, you will get variability in results. The size of the sample we'd need to specify. What container should we use? The sample can deteriorate if subject to certain temperature changes, or various other things can cause the sample to deteriorate. So how are you going to control that? So these are all the things you need to respond to in order to have a good measurement system. So we need the test method. What equipment do you use? How do you prepare the sample? For example, what should be the temperature? We need to make sure people are appropriately tested. Are appropriately trained to do the test, I should say. So we need to make sure that training is really solid and really good. So there's the specification. It's 170 grade bitumen, and to be a 170 grade bitumen, it has to have a viscosity of 140 to 200 Pascal seconds. So when you're in the laboratory, if you get a number between those two numbers, you know it passes if it's in the range. If it's less than that, if it's less than 140, you have to reject that as a 170, but you can blend with a higher grade bitumen to bring that viscosity up and potentially pass it. And similarly, if it's very high, you can blend it with lower grade bitumen and retest it to make sure it's good. So we have lots of things we can do now, right? So I remember back in General Motors days, before I had a small computer on my desk. I was very lucky, not many people did. So using videos and things was almost impossible. We had a rogues gallery where we had a room and we had examples of all the defects on the walls. Right now, you can now use videos and photographs as well as examples, but it's really important to make sure that people doing measurement have got that experience and have looked and found these issues before, or understand what the issues are. So I'll give you an example. Plastic molding. When you plastic mold, if you don't keep the tools clean, you end up with little bits of black carbon embedded in the plastic molding, right? So you may have seen this on some plastic products that you may have purchased. Now, that's purely caused by not cleaning the tools. If you're an inspector at the end of the line and you don't know what you're looking for, that is the definition of a black spot in plastic molding. But if you don't know what a black spot is in plastic molding, you might be looking for like a black spot pimple or something, right? Very interestingly, I was in a General Motors supplier and I could see black spots all over the product, and it was not good for General Motors. And so I challenged them and they said, "Oh, that's what you mean by black spots." Right? So they hadn't realized the definition or what the definition is. So we need to get experienced and inexperienced people to complete the test as you create it to see if you get the same results. So if I select test methods, so when I teach operational definitions in person, everybody gets a packet of M&Ms. So you all know what M&Ms are, right? Those candy. Do you all know what M&Ms are? You must have M&Ms
Yes.
in India. Yeah, okay, good. And everybody has M&Ms, right? And I say, tell me which are the good ones. And then when you start to look at the M&Ms, some people go, oh, I hate the yellow ones. So if everybody has the definition of yellow's no good, you can come up with similar numbers. But if you start looking at whether the M's printed properly or whether they're a good shape, what is the criteria? Unless you have the same thing, you're going to end up with variability in your data. So your data collectors, your analysts, your suppliers, your customers, they all have to have the same definition of what the measurement is, what you're looking for in the product. If those are not aligned, you're going to run into trouble. And I have to say, a big portion of the time I spend with customers who've got issues with their customers is that their definitions have not been agreed in a way that both parties is looking for the same thing, right? So the customer might expect a higher standard than what the supplier is actually capable of supplying. However, if that standard is explained and worked through, it's usable, but you got to get the expectations in line with the reality. Does that make sense? Right. So operational definitions got to take into account when you're creating them. Why are you collecting the data? What do you want to do with it? And then does the method match the intention? I have seen frequently where the method of collecting the data has changed and moved away from the original aim. I've seen this numerous times where the data collection has become an end in itself and it has lost the point of what you're actually trying to do in terms of collecting the data. And you want to make it as simple as you possibly can so anybody can take a measurement or get an understanding from the definition. The more complex you make it, the harder it gets. So one of the test methods that I'm working with at the moment, it is a 1,000-page booklet to run the test method, right? Which is just totally impractical for everybody to be doing it the same method. It's very complex, it's multi-stepped, and it's huge. And there are multiple things that can go wrong at each of the steps. And what we're trying to do is refine it and simplify it and improve it. So the most important thing when you are setting about creating an operational definition for an operational definition for measurement is to test the method. So go and grab different people, different levels of experience. You may want to look at different equipment. So one of the studies I'm involved in at the moment is looking at different equipment where we're getting completely different results from these different pieces of equipment that are supposed to measure the same thing. So the suppliers are saying, well, we do measure it, but we don't measure it on the same scale as another supplier. So we're trying to ascertain the difference in the equipment and try and bringing the method together. And how often do you measure your product and your customer measure the same product to make sure you're in line? Do you do that with your suppliers? Right? Do you measure your suppliers, materials and products that come in? Do you get the same results that they do? Are you in line? Okay. Deming also challenged us. Ooh, I've got an echo. Deming also challenged us that there is no such thing as a true value. So what he meant by that, what did he mean by that? He meant no matter how good you are at measurement, you don't definitely 100% know what the number is. It is your best estimate at this point in time. So let's think about how far is the moon away? Right? It varies, obviously, but the earliest estimates was back in 270 BC by the Greeks. They were way ahead of others, people on the planet at the time, and had really good estimates, right? But NASA needed to be a bit more accurate, right? Because they were trying to land on it in the 1960s, right? Which they managed to do by 69. And one of the things they needed to do was get that measurement more accurate in order to fulfill that need. So does the test and the result match the need? So are you measuring in a way that is useful, coming back to what is the aim of what you're trying to do? So let's think about trains. Right, so I've done a fair bit of work in trains, and one system I was working with, 68% was on time within 5 minutes, and the government was under all sorts of heat. And instead of improving the process, they made a change. Jashankar, you're coming through. Can you mute? Unless you've got a question. They moved the time to within 10 minutes. So instead of being within 5 minutes of the due time, they just moved the timetable time to within 10 minutes. And they got an immediate improvement, 97%. See, we turned around, and the headline was, we have turned around our rail system from 68% on time to 97% on time, but all they did was change the goalposts. It wasn't really true improvement, but it actually did take away the pain of the press complaining about the on-time running. Now, is it important? What are you trying to achieve with the number? This is what you've got to be thinking about. What is the definition of what you're trying to do? Okay. Can somebody mute Jayashankar, please? He was obviously not paying attention to us because hello, Jayashankar, can you mute, please?
Dr. M, can you mute the Jayshankar? You are the host, so you can mute.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. So if you are planning to go to a city on the train, if you think the time is going to be accurate to within 5 minutes versus 10 minutes, the way you planned your trip might be different. Right? So if I want to be there at 9 o'clock and the train gets in at, let's say, 5 to 9, if I think it's going to get there within 5 minutes, I'm going to get that train. But if I know it's only going to get there within 10 minutes, I know I've got to take an earlier train. So it actually will drive behavioral changes in the passengers. So you've got to think about, why are you creating the number, and is the number meaningful and helpful? The best solution is obviously to improve the rail system, so we have good numbers. But when you get an odd result in your data, the first thing you need to do is go and have a look. Has there been a change to the operational definition? Has the method of collection changed? Has the personnel changed? Has the interpretation of the data changed? So whenever you get something odd, you really need to think about, has the data been collected differently, or is this a genuine change in the process? So, did a project with a large company monitoring on-time delivery. These are the numbers we had. So we were benchmarking at this point. Australia had an on-time delivery time of 86%. Singapore was 89%. And surprisingly to all of us, China was 100%. And as we went back in the records, I couldn't find an example of a late delivery from China. And I went back a few years and it was like, well, this is really interesting. When we went to China and talked to the people who take the orders, it was a very interesting conversation because their process was totally different to that in Australia and Singapore. So Australia and Singapore, you would ring in saying, I want this product. And the person in Australia and Singapore would ask them when they would like that delivered by. That would be the recorded delivery time. And you'd compare that to what they actually achieved. The China operators, totally different. When somebody rang in for the product, they would tell them what date they could have it. They didn't ask the customer. They told the customer. And they built in a buffer of 7 days. So if I could have it, if I had it in the warehouse now, I would give myself a buffer of 7 days. If it wasn't going to be produced on the production line for 30 days, I would say 37 days away, giving myself a buffer. Now, is one right, one wrong? You can make your own judgment, but the operational definitions are key to benchmarking. You see lots of benchmarking done around the world against things that are not comparable. Unemployment rates are similar. The way we define unemployed in different countries can be completely and utterly different. In certain countries, Australia being one of them, if you work for more than 2 hours a week, you are not unemployed. Whereas if you go to some of the Scandinavian countries, if you are not fully employed, in other words, I want to work 38 hours a week, if you're only working 37, you would be counted in the unemployed category. So their definitions are completely different. And so when you come to compare those numbers, you can't. And this is one of the key things that is a problem in benchmarking, is finding a system that's so similar to yours you can benchmark against it is actually really hard. And the way you have to do it is through your operational definitions and then revise the data around those operational definitions. So operational, what does it mean? Deming used to challenge people in his seminar. He'd say, operational definitions, what does it mean? You want me to clean the table. You've asked me to clean the table. Well, and he would look at the table and he'd say, bit of spit, bit of polish, it'll be fine. Oh, you want to serve food on the table? Yeah, I might need to find a tablecloth. Maybe give it a quick wipe down. Oh, you want me to provide the table so you can operate? Totally different definition. Right? So you have to understand purpose in your definition. Cleaning trains. Been involved a lot with cleaning trains in different parts of the world. Getting people's in the populations used to what a clean train is. Getting the people who clean the trains to get the same definition, and then the leaders and the government to have the same definition is actually quite challenging, right? And I'll give you an example. What do you think of this train? Do you think it's clean? It's actually a train in Naples. Who thinks it's clean? Come on, is it clean or isn't it clean?
It's
What do you
clean.
think? Clean or not clean? So
Clean.
if I put the Melbourne definition, because it's got graffiti on it, it would immediately be pulled from service at the next opportunity. It's defined as dirty. But if you look, all the windows are clean of graffiti, and that's the definition in Naples. That if there's no graffiti on the windows, it's good to go. This is what you end up with your train, how your train looks. Do you have graffiti? I don't know. Do you have graffiti in India and South Africa and various other places? Do you have graffiti on trains? No, not in South Africa. Lucky you. Okay.
No,
As you can see, it's very bad in Naples. Very, very bad. Now we can explain operational definitions in a much wider other than just measurement. For example, what does as soon as possible mean? If I ask you to do something as soon as possible, what does that mean? All right. So Soon as possible, as in I have to drop everything and do it now, or as soon as possible when I get a space in my diary. What does it mean? So it's asking people to think about the language that they're using and to use language in a way that others can understand more clearly. And that's what operational definitions is at the heart of it. And it's absolutely key between customers and suppliers. So having worked at General Motors on the supplier side, it was very interesting that we would go out to the suppliers and we'd done a really bad job at defining what we wanted, right? In terms of what the product should look like, how it should be labeled. We thought we'd given really good instructions, but on some occasions they'd completely broken down and the communication lines had broken down. So it's really interesting to have a discussion with your supplier about what they think you're saying, what they think you're asking for. It's an incredible thing to talk between customers and suppliers and really define things. You will find the cause of many issues is a lack of operational definitions. A robust agreement can only occur when you've got good definitions, when you were all on the same page and you're all in the same meaning. The aim is completely clear communication, consistent meaning across absolutely everyone. So that's what we're trying to get to. We're trying to get to this really clear communication. Now, it does not matter whether you are the president of the United States or you are on the shop floor assembling parts. Clear communication and improving your definitions when you're communicating can make a huge, enormous difference. I think this is one of the reasons why I particularly like operational definitions, because it doesn't matter who you are. Thinking about them can improve the position. So is the way you assess your product in line with that of your customer? Is the definition between you practical, meaningful, workable? When you receive a customer complaint, what should you look at? What should you ask? Because a lot of people's reaction is, oh my God, we've got a complaint, and they want to get rid of that complaint as fast as possible and close it as fast as possible. And they don't tend to have the discussions around it that they need to. Because quite often around that is misuse of the product, maybe some issues with equipment. So I've got a customer at the moment that produce packaging, and there's some concern about the way the product is being packaged, and they've not got the complaint from any other of their customers, just one. When they went to that customer and had a look at where the problem was, so this is going to Gemba, go to the place where the problem is, they could see what the problem was, and it was their piece of equipment. The way the piece of equipment was handling it was damaging the packaging, and then they were having problems with the product inside, going into the automated system because the packaging was being damaged in process. So very quick discussion between them. But if you just try and suppress the complaint, it's easy to say, well, we're not getting it from anybody else, it must be at your end. But actually going and working with your customer to make a difference, and then talking to the customer about what the definition is, why the packaging is the way it is, and what they need to do with their equipment to manage it, is really, really important. So good operational definitions, that gives you good communication. And that's what we're talking about here, really, is communication. What are you trying to achieve? What are you aiming at? Make sure you're clear in your language. So back to Deming. No requirement of industry is so much neglected. And I agree with him. I find huge gaping holes between suppliers and customers in their discussions, how things are going. Been working with a large retail business recently, and they have a fantastic computer system where all the specifications between their suppliers is managed. And then in the conference I was in with them, we discovered that some of those suppliers don't know how to operate that system. They don't know how to apply for a specification change. Some of them have changed them outside of that system and just don't know how to notify. It was really interesting when they started to pull down and discuss how many of their suppliers were actually in trouble with that. So let's have a general discussion about definitions, and I will try and stop sharing. Ooh, did that work? Yes, it did. Right. So a number of people who've done 12 days have found operational definitions a particularly interesting aspect of it. And we've had quite a few people who have worked a lot harder operational definitions in their organization and reaped huge benefits, absolutely enormous benefits, just by improving the language between areas, between departments, between customer suppliers within the process. Not just the customers and suppliers at the end of the process, but the internal customer suppliers. So just improving language improves communication, and improving communication is hugely important. Right. Do we have any questions?
There is a hand up already. Dr. Emmy's hand is up.
Yeah, I got
Dr. M.
I got a here and now problem with the operational definition, Jackie. When I say the camera is on to my internal customers, how more can I make the operation definition clear that the camera should be on?
Well, it's actually really interesting because when I hold meetings with my customers, yeah, I say cameras on or I'm leaving. It's quite clear.
Right. Thanks for
If
the
you're
hint.
not going to put your camera on, I'm not hanging
Thanks for the
around.
hint. Thanks for the hint. I'm off.
Oh! But you don't know whether people are engaging unless they've got their camera on, right? So, this is a great technology, but it's really a substitution for being in the same room. So you wouldn't walk into a room with a cardboard box on your head. So the cardboard box is the camera off, right? Take the cardboard box off. Get your camera on. Most people have. There's a few that haven't. I suspect Jim Lawton is in his PJs because I think it's a horrendous time of day probably for him. And we know Stone is, although I don't know whether you're in your PJs or not, Stone. So has anybody else tried to use operational definitions, and what success have you had or otherwise?
Yeah, I like to share one example.
Yes, please do.
So we recently designed one interdepartmental communication check sheet, and it's about a list of equipments the electrical technician has to operate in the night time, and one of the operation team has to kind of give them instruction on a check sheet which one to operate and what time to start. And we found one interesting thing where what if if there is an empty entry, or what if there is a dash, what if there is a NA, what does that mean? Because it could mean anything, right? Could mean that an empty log could mean that the engineer forgot to enter, or maybe it doesn't need to be run. So it gives an ambiguous situation for the electrician. So for all those things, we define the checklist at the bottom of the checklist. What does NA mean? What does dash mean? What does unfilled entry mean? So that there is no ambiguity for the electrician. And also we told they mentioned what they should do if they find an empty log. So who are they supposed to call? And those kind of sequence of kind of a decision tree, so that there is no chance for misunderstanding, because we have seen that people forget to enter, and then it is misunderstood as if it's not supposed to run. So that's not only the larger definition, but even signs and symbols could also create confusion or lack of clarity.
But I think it's interesting that, so I'm old enough to remember before AI, right? So I think So back when records were manual, it was interesting what you would find on the edges. So you would see a check sheet and you would find all sorts of interesting notes written on the side, right? So I think my favorite example is potholes. So you know potholes in the road, right? People would get a map, they'd put a little cross, and they'd scribble a quick description. You know, it's big, gonna need traffic control. Little 5-minute job. They would put all these little notes on it. And when you try and AI it, what you end up is this really complex thing that people, you know, you're asking people to fill in all these drop down boxes about the thing. And quite often you're still not getting to the nut, that ad lib, that ability to ad lib and just to add some useful notes. It's not, it's often not there. Some systems it is there, but it's about what are you know, it's going back to what I talked about at the beginning. Why are you doing it? What are you trying to get out of it? Because sometimes that gets lost, particularly you can automate it and you actually lose. The automation's great, but it doesn't actually now fulfill the needs that you were originally trying to do. Right? So you have to keep the end in mind, right?
Yeah.
But that's a great example. Yeah, trying to control what people put in is very important, right? And also being able to add information, what's extra, right? Particularly like in surveys, when you're surveying customers, you know, there's I go to the football a lot, which Dr. M knows. Nearly every time he's trying to contact me, I'm at the football. But anyway, I love my football. And I get a survey every time I go, I get a survey, you know, did it meet up to your requirements? How was the service of the staff? Blah, 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 right? And, you know, quite often you're just filling in numbers, but sometimes you actually want to write a bit more information. Yeah, so a particular person was really helpful and a lady had fallen over, and the way the staff took care of her was really fabulous. And I wanted to compliment them on that, but it's actually hard to do that when you're just doing numbers, right? You need an ad lib space to say, hey, the staff at gate 6 were absolutely fantastic at the MCJ, the way that, you know. So those are the things that you got to think about. What am I cutting back by doing these things, by these automations, and am I losing what my aim is? I think the definitions in AI are more important, absolutely more important, because if you create a form and you've got something missing, people can scribble notes on it, right? In AI you can't do that anymore, so you have to really think it through. Any other examples?
Thank you. I've got Anand has got his hand up.
Yeah.
Balaji, you need to put your hand up.
Yeah. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
And thank you for conducting very informative session on operational definition.
You're
Last
welcome.
year, when we were implementing DWM, Daily Work Management, in one of the company in India, we observed that there were 3 plants within India. And when we have identified KPIs, key performance indicators related to safety, quality, productivity, and other things, we found that understanding of doing the calculation for KPIs was different. So we did training program for operational definitions for all those people. In fact, we have made a small format also to do the calculations, that how data will flow for numerator and how data will flow in denominator and how it will be calculated. And afterwards, we found that there was uniformity in the results across all 3 plants. So this was the exercise which we have done in India in one of the company.
Right.
Maybe I will share the format with Dr. M, and appropriately then he can decide what is to be done. Thank you, Dr. once again for this session.
We will have an agreement, and You want me to charge in dollars or euros?
Yeah. Oh, he's disappeared now. It's okay. Balaji, did you have a question or something? You're on mute.
Yeah, no, thanks, Jackie. Wonderful to see you again. Just wanted to ask, can you hear me?
Not clearly.
Yeah.
Not
Oh,
clearly.
maybe. Oh, he disappeared altogether? He disappeared altogether. Okay. That definitely got worse. We can't see him now either. Did anybody else have any question or comments that they'd like to make?
Yeah, while Anand was talking about the numerator and the denominator thinking, it reminded me of a very old definition, how organizations calculate scrap per se.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So, yeah, scrap numerator is obvious. Yeah, denominators have the catch, and that is where the definition becomes the key. Do you get the material, the entire material issued to the shop floor, or do you get the material consumed as per the bill of material? As the denominator. This
And
is yeah. This is
sorry,
one
go on.
example that came to my mind.
Right. So you see a lot of games being played around operational definitions. I think the best one I've seen is so in a mining company, if you had a workplace accident that resulted in an injury where somebody missed a whole shift of work, you had to go to the board and explain what happened and what you're doing to prevent it, and how can other sites learn from your experiences. I went to a very remote site. So when I say very remote, it is 10 hours flying between little planes. And then you get in a car and you drive for another 5 hours. It is really in the whoop whoop outback of Australia. And when you get there, I found a receptionist, which seemed like really odd because who's going to find a receptionist in, there's not, they haven't got couriers coming in or those kind of people coming in, right? And the guy who was on the reception had a broken arm and a broken leg. And he'd been in a truck rollover and he was there for 1 hour sitting at the desk. So he wasn't a lost time injury. So he was going in for 1 hour a day to prevent the boss from having to go to the board and explain how his truck fell from one bench to another. The guy was lucky to survive and was having to put up with this 1 hour of going into work. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous, right? So you find people playing the games if you don't define your operational definitions well, right? You find people play games, and scrap is a big one, right? Scrap is a huge one. I found in factories orange tape on things where under review. There's the whole huge thing that's under review. Why is it under review? Oh, they're not quite right. Okay, well, let's have a look. Why are they not quite right? Right? And when you look at it a bit further, they're actually scrap, but the scrap is a bit high this month. So we're just keeping them under review until next month. Hopefully we won't have as much scrap, and then we'll put them through, and then nobody will notice that we made this big disaster this month, right? So they'd put half of it through, kept half of it back, taped it orange. Right. I'm sure you've all seen things like that. And what you've got to do is make your definitions tight enough that you don't do it, and that it's not possible to do it, that people have to face the consequences, right? I noticed there's some questions in the chat, but Balaji's back.
Yeah.
Oh, that's much better.
Bad connection. Anyway, can you hear me now?
Yes, very, very clearly. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks, Jackie, for the session. Am I allowed to supplement, or is that a different discussion?
In what way? We've got 10 minutes left, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, because just you made a statement which really struck a chord. You used the word standard, which was there, and the basis for standard again is an operational definition, and key chapter 9 is operational definition are the crisis, and chapter 10 is standards. So
Yeah.
one
Yes,
thing
they're incredibly linked. And
exactly,
having been a member of a standards committee, it is terrifying because what you find is that in those committees, it's about coming to consensus,
yes,
not necessarily producing the best definition.
right. And that's
And
like,
this is one of the things I'm facing in some of the measurement work I'm doing at the moment, that we're trying to produce a standard and we've got these test equipment that don't want to line up. And so now how are you going to manage this in a, and bring it all together to make an operational definition? Then you've got to take it to a standards board and get
right.
everybody to agree. Yeah, it's feeling like an obstacle course, right? But
Yes.
I mean, operational definitions, Deming was trying to talk about communication, but yes, it then leads into standards. Yeah.
And interestingly, World Standards Day is 14th October, which is Dr. Deming's birth anniversary. So it's a coincidence that we have. World Standards Day is the 14th of October.
So in the chat, somebody's talked
Yeah,
about.
there's a lot on the chat, and
There's a lot on the chat.
I see Sitong has been busy, so can we give him the chance for him to raise one of his points?
I was just going to quickly answer one of them. I'll just do that quickly, and then Sitong, you're over to you. Inflation and what is CPI? So every country has its own definitions, and in Australia, we have 3 different ways. We have 3 different ways of doing it, right? So we have CPI, which is more controlled inside of Australia, a CPI number that is more global, and then we have a CPI number which includes everything, but we can't count that apparently because it involves a lot of international stuff, and when international stuff happens like has happened in the Middle East and fuels go up, that CPI number goes up, but these other CPIs are not going up, so we'll focus on those ones. So yeah, CPI is one of those things like unemployment that comparing country to country, you have to make sure that there's the same things in the basket, right? And what are staples in one country wouldn't be the staples in another either. So you've got to take that into account. In Australia, it would be potatoes would be a staple, for example, in your grocery basket. Whereas I suspect it's rice in India, right? So yeah. Sitong.
Yeah, Jackie, I want to ask you 2 questions. One is in your presentation, you mentioned the keywords about the meaning, and that's very important because right now the language, especially when we're involved in AI, became more no meaning. More no meaning based on the AI generated more outputs, but those outputs have not exactly matching the reality. First, the lack of execution. Second, the AI outputs itself have some hallucinations suffered. It means not exactly correct. Need to verify. So these twins of message put on the table let people during the communication process, no matter with machine or with Bell agent, that a machine means a silicon agent, and became super ineffective. It means people is drawing in the ocean, drawing under the water. They cannot see, even they cannot breathe. So the result is that those kind of guidelines originally should support the front line effectively. People follow. No one follow that. Just put in there. Formally, in the traditional management, we already see, for example, like a Six Sigma age, a lot of tools put at the corner, no one run the execution, and then finally those kind of operation programs still in there. And right now the situation in the age of AI became more worse. So this is the first thing. It's totally against our operational definition because our definition means clear, verify, meaning, and each step, right? that's almost against when you just put on that. Each step is that one. The second one is exponential effect, like Kai said. If we like they use this exponential effect to charge people more money, right? Like the APR, that one, that bank use that. But in the business, they only focus on, for example, today, how many numbers you shaped or how many quota you generated. But a lot of program like a snowball, they don't realize that, for example, today I just improve 1% or I less better 1%. How many over time, over 1 month or over a year, this kind of exponential effect left to the business. So this is a second blind spot we apply, we discovered on the front line. People totally don't address that because everyone just focus on that 1 week or 1 day, by the end of day was that. Their vision never touch that. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah.
And
So yeah, what you're talking about is you need the definitions cascading down, cascading understanding, right?
Yeah, but all of this is operation. It's a real operation from middle management to the front line. Yeah.
Yeah. You need to be able to cascade from the top to the bottom, but you can only do that if you're communicating really well. And I think quite often we don't define well. And so then as it cascades down, we end up doing things that was not the original intention. I do think we have got challenges in terms of AI, in terms of what it creates and whether it's truth or not truth, whether it's real or not real, on top of all that as well, which is a whole different subject, right?
And the manager's choice, they are like a sandwich suffering in the middle.
Yeah,
and
absolutely. Absolutely. I've sat in that seat.
Their fears to lose their job is that they just try to put the hand in the sand and try to expect another new tool, another new agent coming to solve everything they cannot solve. And the result is that there's more chaos evolving, right? Yeah.
So in my early General Motors days, I was working for a manager who was amazing because he would shelter us all from what was going on at corporate. So this isn't when I was at General Motors, and he was brilliant. He basically put an umbrella up and protected everybody. And when that person changed, all hell broke loose because the next person didn't do any protecting. He just passed on all the rubbish to all of us. And we were all running around. Suddenly, instead of being the focused functional team we were before, we were all running around like headless chooks because we were all trying to react to the latest message from head office, right? So yeah, quite can cause quite a chaotic moment in time, and create, instead of focused good working, you can end up in this chaos. So yeah, good operational definitions is a key part of it. We are coming to the top of the hour. I was thinking next session of doing point 3, cease dependence on mass inspection. I noticed that now I don't know how to pronounce your name, Prakash or Surya Prakash. Is that right? He's not responding. Anyway, I noticed you'd put some stuff up online about this, and I think it would be a good thing to talk about. What is mass inspection and why should we cease being dependent on it? There are some techniques you can use to help, and there is a lot of things that people miss in that journey as well. So I'd like to talk about those next month if people think that's a good idea. If you have other ideas or other subjects you want me to talk about, then please just post them up and let me know, or Dr. M know. Dr. M, you've got your hand up.
That was because I got to say thank you very much.
Okay.
Yes, the past the hour, and the macro thing is the importance that we find between PDSA and PDCA. So when we do a PDSA, then we study it and probably the operation definition gets refined. And PDCA, probably if you're using it a checkbook, I don't think you can have much of it. I'm not getting into all the Gemba experiences that how do you define a pinhole, a blowhole, how a manufacturing guy checks, how the customer checks. The definitions vary from each other, and then you get into a chaos. So thank you very much, Jackie, for bringing it in.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and thank you very much for all those people who did not put the camera on.
Most people did. I think we had more cameras on this
Yeah,
time, which
because
is
I'm
good.
thanking them because this session I will not be issuing any certificate of participation.
Oh, to
Next,
people who
no, I did not see any cameras on. I didn't see the chat
no,
here.
no, no. Almost everybody's got their camera on.
Okay, I'll just issue to those people who have the camera on. Jackie, I'll issue you one first. Right. Thank
Okay,
you
my
very
camera on.
much.
Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jackie. It's lovely that you spend a Sunday every month, the fourth Sunday every month,
Yes,
not the
it's
last Sunday. You take,
26th of July. The next one's 26th of July.
you got the operations definition right. You said the fourth Sunday of the month. So I never said last Sunday. So thank you
Yeah,
very much for
not
that.
necessarily.
The operating definition is correct, Jackie. I got it right. So then, well, those people who want the certificate of participation and you think that your camera is on and you think that you've chatted, send it to me. We will get it verified, rectified, etc. And we'll request Jackie to put her digital signature on that. And your full name, if you have given it correct, is a pseudonym or etc. Sorry, I will be putting that. Thanks so very much for joining us. And I sent 256 invitations. And I'm so happy that 34 joined it. Isn't that wonderful? Great. So
Yep.
I think if we have to do something. And thank you very much, Vikas Negi. You calendarized everything. One operation definition we did not say is that when you get the calendarized definition, you have to mark yes, I will be participating, maybe or no. Otherwise, we don't get ticks. So Negi got 21 green ticks. The last one was mine because I forgot to do it. So, Jackie, on Sunday, we have to be honest to ourselves, right? So that's the way I am
Okay.
honest. So thank you very much to Jackie,
No
Vikas
worries.
for
Pleasure.
all the calendarization. Kamal.
And thank you to everybody who attended. It's great. Good to see you all
Thank you,
online. Thank you
Jackie.
for your time.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
Gilbert, thank you very much
Thank you so
for
much.
sharing the chats. And see you on July
26th.
Yeah. Yes, we would put that. Oh my God, who blasted that heart? I don't know.
Oh, that was good. I love that.
Who did that?
I think it was
Anyway?
Nipa.
Oh, she got a new eye. So there you go.
I didn't know how it happened, but it did. So
Now, how you happen? Please give me an operation definition. I'll do it next time. Thank you very
Excellent.
much.
Thanks, guys.
And
Bye.
namaste.
Yeah.